The distress signal traveled through space at the speed of light. It had been moving for 3 weeks now, carrying a message of desperation across the stars. Elder Chavris sat in the communications room of the Valthran Council building, her antenna trembling with fear. She was old now, her exoskeleton showing the pale green color of advanced age. Around her, the other council members waited in silence. The Valthran homeworld had been peaceful for as long as anyone could remember. They were a gentle species, insectoid in form but warm in nature. Their cities were built from living plants, grown and shaped over centuries. They had no weapons, no armies, no concept of large-scale violence. War was something they read about in ancient histories, not something they ever expected to face. Then the Kryn came. The Kryn Empire was built on conquest. They were reptilian creatures, tall and covered in natural armor. They moved through the galaxy like locusts, taking what they wanted and destroying what they could not use. 3 months ago, their fleet had arrived in the Valthran system. They did not send diplomatic messages. They did not ask for permission. They simply attacked. The first moon fell in 2 days. The Valthran had no defenses. Their ships were designed for exploration and trade, not combat. The Kryn weapons dissolved organic matter, turning living beings into puddles of liquid. Entire cities were wiped out in hours. The survivors were rounded up and shipped to work camps. The second moon lasted a week. The Valthran tried to evacuate, but the Kryn ships were faster. They hunted down the refugee vessels and destroyed them. Those who surrendered were enslaved. The Kryn needed workers for their mining operations and manufacturing facilities. They did not care that the Valthran were a civilized species with art, music, and literature. To the Kryn, they were just another resource to exploit. Now the Kryn fleet surrounded the third moon and the homeworld itself. Warlord Krath, the commander of the invasion force, had given the Valthran Council an ultimatum: surrender completely and accept slavery, or watch as their entire species was exterminated. He gave them 1 week to decide. Elder Chavris had made her choice. She activated the ancient long-range communications array, a relic from the early days of Valthran space exploration. She did not know if anyone would hear the signal. She did not know if anyone would care. But she had to try. The message was simple. It showed images of Valthran cities burning. It showed children being separated from their parents and loaded onto transport ships. It showed the Kryn soldiers laughing as they destroyed a hospital. Elder Chavris spoke directly to the camera, her voice steady despite her fear. We are the Valthran people. We are being destroyed by an empire that knows only violence. We have no weapons to fight them. We have no ships to escape them. If anyone can hear this message, please help us. We do not ask you to fight our battle. We only ask that you bear witness to what is happening here. Do not let the galaxy forget that we existed. The message ended with coordinates for the Valthran system. Then it repeated, over and over, broadcasting in every direction. 23 light-years away, the signal reached the edge of human space. Captain Alex Morgan was drinking coffee when the alert sounded. She was on the bridge of the Harbinger, a reconnaissance frigate assigned to patrol the outer territories of the Terran Federation. It was usually boring work. Most days involved scanning empty space and filing reports that nobody read. Lieutenant Kate Phillips looked up from her console. She was the tactical officer, a woman in her 30s with sharp eyes and quick reflexes. She had seen combat during the Proxima border wars, and she knew the difference between a routine signal and something serious. Captain, we are picking up a distress signal. It is not human. The translation software is working on it now. Morgan set down her coffee. In 15 years of service, she had never encountered an alien distress signal. Humanity had only made contact with a handful of alien species, and most of those encounters had been peaceful trading relationships. The idea that someone out there needed help was both exciting and concerning. Put it on screen, she ordered. The bridge went silent as the message played. Morgan watched the images of destruction with growing horror. She had seen war before. She had lost friends in combat. But this was different. This was not a battle between armies. This was slaughter. When the message ended, nobody spoke for a long moment. Commander Sam Carter, the chief engineer, broke the silence. He was a practical man who usually focused on keeping the ship running, but even he looked shaken. We have to report this to command, he said quietly. Morgan nodded. She knew the regulations. First contact situations required immediate notification to Terran Federation Command. Non-interference was the official policy. Humanity had learned hard lessons about getting involved in conflicts they did not fully understand, but Morgan also knew that sometimes regulations were not enough. She looked at the frozen image on the screen, showing a Valthran child being dragged away from its parent. She made a decision. Phillips calculated jump to Earth, maximum speed. Carter, I want the engines ready to push beyond normal limits. We are going to deliver this message personally. The crew moved quickly. The Harbinger was a small ship, but she was fast. Within an hour, they entered slipspace and began the journey home. The trip would take 3 days. Morgan spent that time reviewing the distress signal over and over, memorizing every detail. Dr. Lisa Martinez, the ship's xenobiologist, analyzed the biological data from the signal. She was a brilliant scientist who spoke 17 alien languages and had dedicated her life to understanding other species. She came to Morgan's office on the second day of the journey. The Valthran are completely pacifist, Martinez explained. Their entire culture is built around cooperation and peaceful coexistence. They do not even have a concept of personal violence. To them, the idea of intentionally hurting another being is incomprehensible. Morgan absorbed this information. She thought about Earth's history, about the countless wars and conflicts that had shaped humanity. Violence was not foreign to humans. It was part of their nature, something they had to constantly work to control and channel productively. What about these Kryn? Morgan asked. Martinez pulled up data on her tablet. From what I can gather from the signal, they are a conquest culture. They believe that strength gives them the right to take what they want. They have been expanding for centuries, destroying or enslaving every species they encounter. The Valthran are just their latest victims. Morgan felt a cold anger settling in her chest. She had seen bullies before. She had fought against tyranny during the border wars. But this was different in scale. This was genocide. When the Harbinger arrived at Earth, Morgan requested an immediate meeting with Terran Federation Command. She was granted an audience with Admiral Jack Bennett, the head of fleet operations. Bennett was a legend in the military, a man who had served for 40 years and earned respect through both his tactical brilliance and his unwavering integrity. Morgan presented the distress signal to a room full of admirals and civilian leaders. She watched their faces as they saw the images of destruction. Some looked away, others clenched their fists. Everyone understood what they were witnessing. When the presentation ended, the debate began. Some argued for non-interference. The Valthran were not human allies. They had no strategic value. Getting involved could start a war with the Kryn Empire. It was not humanity's responsibility to police the galaxy. Others argued for action. The images spoke for themselves. This was not a political dispute or a territorial conflict. This was evil, plain and simple. If humanity had the power to stop it and chose not to act, what did that say about human values? Admiral Bennett listened to all the arguments. Then he stood and walked to the display screen. He zoomed in on one particular image, showing Valthran children being loaded into cargo containers. He stared at it for a long time. I have children, Bennett said quietly. I have grandchildren. When I look at this image, I do not see aliens. I see kids who are scared and alone. I see parents who could not protect them. I see a civilization being destroyed for no reason other than cruelty. He turned to face the council. His voice was steady but hard as steel. Humanity spent thousands of years fighting among ourselves. We know what genocide looks like. We know what happens when good people do nothing. We swore after the last war that we would never allow such atrocities to happen again. That oath did not come with geographic limitations. He paused, letting his words sink in. The Valthran sent out a distress signal. They asked for help. They asked us to bear witness. We can do more than witness. We can stop this. We should stop this, and we will stop this. The vote was close, but it passed. The Terran Federation would mobilize a fleet to intervene in the Valthran system. Bennett was given command of the operation. He immediately began making preparations. Captain Morgan returned to the Harbinger with new orders. Her ship would serve as the advance scout for the fleet. Within 48 hours, 3 battle cruisers, 7 destroyers, and 2 carrier groups were assembled. It was the largest military operation humanity had undertaken since the border wars. As the fleet prepared to depart, Morgan stood on the observation deck and looked at the assembled ships. She thought about Elder Shavris and the desperate message she had sent into the void. The Kryn patrol ship exploded without warning. One moment it was cruising through the outer system. scanning for Valthran escape pods. The next moment, it was a cloud of debris expanding into the void. The other 5 patrol ships in the group immediately went to high alert, searching for the threat. They did not have long to search. The human destroyers came out of the darkness like sharks, their weapons already firing. Railgun rounds punched through Kryn shields as if they were made of paper. Missile swarms overwhelmed the point defense systems. Within 8 minutes, all 6 patrol ships were destroyed. The human fleet did not stop to celebrate. They simply moved deeper into the system, heading toward the occupied moons. Admiral Bennett stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Vengeance, watching the tactical display with cold satisfaction. Captain Morgan contacted him from the Harbinger. "Admiral, the outer perimeter is clear. We are detecting major Kryn forces around the 2nd and 3rd moons. Approximately 20 warships plus ground installations." Bennett nodded. "Good work, Captain. Take your ship ahead and establish contact with the Valthran leadership. Let them know we are here. The rest of the fleet will prepare for the main assault." The Harbinger broke away from the fleet and headed toward the 3rd moon, where intelligence suggested the Valthran Council was being held. Morgan sat in her command chair, feeling the weight of the moment. They were about to make first contact with a species that humanity had never met before, in the middle of a war zone. Dr. Martinez stood beside her, ready to handle the communication. Phillips monitored the tactical situation, making sure no Kryn ship surprised them. Commander Carter kept the engines ready for a quick escape if needed. The communication channel opened and Elder Shavris appeared on the screen. Morgan took a moment to study the alien leader. She was clearly insectoid with 4 arms and large compound eyes. Her body was covered in a pale green exoskeleton that showed signs of age. But despite her alien appearance, Morgan could see the intelligence and dignity in her bearing. Morgan stood and spoke clearly. "Elder Shavris, I am Captain Alex Morgan of the Terran Federation. We received your distress signal. Our fleet has arrived to help your people." Shavris seemed overwhelmed. Her antenna trembled, and when she spoke, her voice was thick with emotion. "You came. I sent that message into the void, hoping someone would hear it, but I never truly believed anyone would come. Thank you. Thank you so much." Morgan felt a tightness in her chest. "We heard you, Elder, and we are not just here to bear witness. We are here to end this occupation. Can you tell us about the current situation?" Shavris explained the grim reality. The Kryn held the 1st and 2nd moons completely. Tens of thousands of Valthran were enslaved in work camps on those moons, forced to mine resources and manufacture weapons for the Kryn war machine. The 3rd moon and the homeworld were partially occupied, with Warlord Krath using Valthran civilians as shields for his military installations. He has threatened to kill 10,000 prisoners if anyone tries to interfere. Shavris said quietly, "I fear that if you attack, he will carry out that threat." Morgan exchanged glances with her crew. Then she looked back at Shavris. "Elder, I need you to understand something about humanity. We do not negotiate with those who use innocence as shields. We will not be deterred by threats. We will free your people no matter what it takes." The certainty in Morgan's voice seemed to both comfort and worry Shavris. The Valthran elder had asked for help, but she was beginning to realize that humanity's idea of help might be more violent than she had imagined. Back on the Vengeance, Admiral Bennett convened a council of war. His senior officers gathered in the briefing room. Lieutenant Phillips presented the tactical situation, using holographic displays to show the positions of Kryn forces. "The Kryn have superior numbers," Phillips explained. 23 warships to our 12. However, their technology is inferior. Their shields are weak against kinetic weapons, and their ships lack the maneuverability of our vessels. Their tactics rely on overwhelming force rather than strategy. Commander Carter added his analysis. "Their damage control systems are primitive. Once we penetrate their shields, they have trouble containing fires and repairing hull breaches. They also seem to have no concept of redundant systems. Knock out one power generator and the whole ship goes dark." Bennett listened carefully. Then he asked the key question. "What about the prisoners? Can we attack without causing mass casualties among the Valthran?" There was a long silence. Finally, Major Chris Taylor spoke up. Taylor was the commander of the Marine Forces, a veteran of dozens of ground operations. He was a big man with scars on his face and a reputation for getting difficult jobs done. "We can do it," Taylor said firmly. "We send in special operations teams to secure the prison camps before the main assault begins. It will be dangerous and we will take casualties, but it is possible. Bennett considered this. He thought about the images from the distress signal, about the Valthran children being loaded into cargo containers. He thought about his own grandchildren back on Earth, safe and loved. He made his decision. We will proceed in phases. First, we secure the prisoner camps on the second moon. Then we engage the Kryn fleet. Once we have space superiority, we move on the fortified positions on the third moon. Questions? There were no questions. Everyone understood what was being asked of them. They were going into combat against a numerically superior enemy in a system they barely knew to save a species they had just met. It was exactly the kind of impossible mission that humanity seemed to specialize in. Bennett dismissed the officers and sent a message to Warlord Krath. The message was broadcast on all frequencies, in perfect Kryn dialect. It was cold, precise, and terrifying in its simplicity. This is Admiral Jack Bennett of the Terran Federation. You are occupying the Valthran system illegally. You have committed genocide against a peaceful species. You have enslaved innocent civilians. This ends now. You have 48 hours to evacuate this system. Take your ships and leave. If you remain, you will be destroyed. If you harm any more prisoners, there will be no quarter given. No mercy, no survivors. The choice is yours. The message reached Warlord Krath aboard his command ship orbiting the third moon. Krath was a massive reptilian creature, covered in thick armored scales. He had conquered 7 systems during his career and had never met an enemy he could not defeat through sheer force. He listened to the human message and laughed. His officers joined in the laughter, though some of them looked uncertain. The patrol ships had been destroyed quickly, but surely that was just luck. Surely these humans could not stand against the might of the Kryn Empire. Send a reply, Krath ordered. Tell these humans that if they do not leave immediately, I will execute 100 Valthran prisoners. Broadcast the execution so they can watch. His second-in-command, General Vex, hesitated. Warlord, perhaps we should learn more about these humans before we provoke them further. They destroyed 6 of our patrol ships in minutes. Krath turned on Vex with a snarl. Are you afraid, General? They are a single species with 12 ships. We have 23 warships and thousands of soldiers. They are nothing. Execute the prisoners. Show them that we do not fear their threats. The executions were carried out an hour later. 100 Valthran civilians were lined up in a public square on the third moon and killed by Kryn soldiers. The whole event was broadcast across the system, just as Krath had ordered. Aboard the Vengeance, Admiral Bennett watched the broadcast in silence. His staff watched him, waiting for his reaction. Bennett's face showed no emotion, but his eyes were hard as diamonds. When the broadcast ended, Bennett spoke one word: mobilize. The human fleet erupted into coordinated action. Major Taylor and his Marines loaded into assault shuttles. Phillips began finalizing attack vectors. Carter pushed the engines to maximum output. Every ship in the fleet went to battle stations. Bennett opened a channel to the entire fleet. His voice was calm, but it carried the weight of absolute authority. All ships, this is Admiral Bennett. Warlord Krath has just executed 100 innocent civilians to make a point. He thinks we will be intimidated. He thinks we will back down. He is wrong. We are going to show him what happens when you threaten the friends of humanity. We are going to show him that cruelty has a price. Operation Righteous Fury is now active. All ships move to assault positions. Marines begin insertion procedures. This ends today. The fleet moved forward with terrible purpose. The destroyers formed a spearhead, ready to engage the Kryn warships. The battle cruisers took up supporting positions, their heavy weapons charging. The carriers launched fighters and bombers, creating a swarm of smaller craft that would harry the enemy, and hidden among the larger ships, moving through the debris field of the destroyed patrol craft. The Marine assault shuttles began their infiltration run. They were painted black and coated with stealth materials. They did not show up on most sensors. They were ghosts, carrying death to those who had killed the innocent. Major Taylor sat in the lead shuttle with his strike team. They were the best of the best, Marines who had volunteered for the most dangerous missions. They checked their weapons one last time, reviewing the mission parameters in their heads. The third moon of Valthis was different from the others. It was smaller, rockier, and had an atmosphere so thin that most beings needed breathing equipment to survive on the surface. The Kryn had chosen it for their final stronghold precisely because it was defensible. The terrain was harsh, full of deep canyons and jagged mountains that made approach difficult. Warlord Krath stood in his command center, carved deep into the rock of the largest mountain. Around him, his remaining officers prepared for the human assault they knew was coming. 9 warships remained in orbit, along with 5,000 ground troops spread across fortified positions. And scattered throughout the military installations were 15,000 Valthran hostages. Krath had positioned them carefully. Every weapons battery had Valthran workers nearby. Every command bunker was surrounded by civilian quarters. The humans could not strike without risking massive collateral damage. General Vex approached the warlord cautiously. The humans have secured the second moon. Our fleet there has been destroyed. We have lost 14 ships in total. Perhaps we should reconsider the terms of surrender. Krath turned on him with rage. Surrender? We are Kryn! We do not surrender to inferior species. The humans may have won a few battles, but they cannot take this moon without killing their precious Valthran. They are weak. They care too much about the lives of others. That weakness will be their downfall. Vex said nothing more, but he did not look convinced. He had seen the efficiency with which the humans fought. He had watched them dismantle the Kryn fleet with precision and skill. These were not the soft, compassionate beings that Krath believed them to be. These were warriors who fought with controlled fury. In orbit above the moon, the human fleet regrouped. The carrier groups launched reconnaissance drones to map the Kryn positions. The destroyers formed a defensive perimeter. The battlecruisers powered up their main weapons, ready to provide fire support when needed. Admiral Bennett sat in his command chair, studying the intelligence reports. The situation was complex. A direct assault would cost lives on both sides. But time was not on their side either. The longer they waited, the more time Krath had to fortify his positions or harm the hostages. Captain Morgan's ship docked with the Vengeance. She made her way to the briefing room where Bennett had assembled his command staff. Major Taylor was there, along with Phillips, Carter, and several other senior officers. Bennett spoke without preamble. We have 2 problems. First, Krath has dispersed the hostages throughout his military installations. Second, the terrain makes orbital bombardment imprecise. We need to go in on the ground and extract the prisoners before we can neutralize the Kryn forces. Major Taylor stepped forward. My Marines can do it, sir. We insert teams at multiple points, coordinate the assaults, and secure the hostages sector by sector. It will take time and it will be dangerous, but it's doable. Phillips raised a concern. The Kryn still have 9 warships in orbit. If we commit our ground forces, those ships could interfere with the insertion or extraction. We need to deal with them first. Carter offered a solution. What if we create a diversion? Pull the Kryn ships away from the moon. Engage them in open space where we have the advantage. While they're occupied, the Marines go in. Bennett considered this. It was risky, but it was better than the alternatives. He looked at each of his officers in turn, reading their determination and resolve. We proceed with a combined operation. Phillips, you take 3 destroyers and provoke the Kryn fleet. Draw them out of orbit. Once they're committed, the rest of us will engage and destroy them. Taylor, you prepare your Marines for immediate insertion once the orbital space is clear. Time this right and we can pull it off. The operation began 6 hours later. Lieutenant Phillips led her destroyers on a high-speed run past the moon, deliberately exposing themselves to the Kryn sensors. They even fired a few shots at the Kryn warships, not enough to do serious damage, but enough to provoke a response. It worked. The Kryn commander in orbit, eager for revenge after the defeats at the other moons, ordered his ships to pursue. The 9 Kryn warships left their defensive positions and gave chase. Phillips led them on a winding path through the system, always staying just out of effective weapons range. Her ships moved with grace and precision, dancing through space like predators playing with their prey. The Kryn ships followed, growing more frustrated with each passing minute. When they were far enough from the moon, Phillips sprang the trap. The rest of the human fleet emerged from the shadow of a nearby asteroid field. The Kryn suddenly found themselves surrounded, outnumbered, and outmaneuvered. The battle was fierce but short. The humans concentrated their fire, taking down 1 Kryn ship at a time. The enemy tried to break through and return to the moon, but Phillips's destroyers blocked their path. Within 30 minutes, 7 of the 9 ships were destroyed. The remaining 2 surrendered. With orbital space secured, Major Taylor launched the ground operation. 200 Marines and 20 assault shuttles descended toward the moon's surface. They had identified 14 separate locations where hostages were being held. Each location would be hit simultaneously. Sergeant Lauren Blake commanded one of the assault teams. Her shoulder was still bandaged from the previous battle, but she refused to sit this one out. Her team was assigned to the largest hostage location, a mining facility where 3,000 Valthran were forced to work in dangerous conditions. The shuttles landed under cover of darkness. The Marines moved out quickly, using the rough terrain for concealment. They had studied the Kryn defensive positions and knew where every guard post was located. Blake's team approached the mining facility from the east, moving through a series of narrow canyons. The thin atmosphere made breathing difficult even with their helmets, but they pushed through the discomfort. They were Marines. Discomfort was part of the job. They reached the perimeter fence and paused. Blake used her helmet sensors to scan for guards. She spotted 3 Kryn soldiers patrolling the fence line. She signaled her team, and 3 shots rang out in perfect synchronization. The guards dropped without making a sound. The team cut through the fence and moved into the facility. The layout was simple. Prisoner barracks on one side, guard quarters on the other, with the mining equipment in the center. Blake split her team into 2 groups. One would secure the prisoners, the other would neutralize the remaining guards. The assault was swift and brutal. The Kryn guards were tough, but they were not prepared for the speed and aggression of the human attack. The Marines moved through the facility like a storm, clearing each building methodically. Blake reached the main prisoner barracks and found the doors locked from the outside. She placed a breaching charge and stepped back. The explosion blew the doors inward, and she led her team inside. The Valthran prisoners cowered in fear, not knowing if this was another Kryn trick. Blake removed her helmet so they could see her face. She spoke in their language, using the phrases Dr. Martinez had taught the Marines. "We are humans. We came to free you. Follow us and we will take you to safety." At first, no one moved. Then slowly one Valthran stepped forward. It was an elderly female, her exoskeleton scarred from years of hard labor. She looked at Blake with her compound eyes and spoke in broken but understandable human language. "You came. Elder Shavris said someone heard her message, but we did not believe it." "You really came for us." Blake felt a lump in her throat. "Yes, we came. Now let's get you out of here." Across the moon, similar scenes were playing out. Marine teams secured hostage locations one by one. Some encounters turned into firefights. Some Kryn soldiers chose to fight to the death rather than surrender. The Marines gave them that choice and moved on. By dawn, 11 of the 14 locations had been secured, but 3 remained, including Warlord Krath's command center. The Warlord had retreated deep into his mountain fortress with 2,000 hostages and his elite guard. Major Taylor regrouped his forces and prepared for the final assault. This would be the hardest fight yet. The command center was heavily fortified, with multiple layers of defenses, and Krath was desperate, which made him dangerous. Admiral Bennett contacted Taylor directly. The 2 men had served together for years and understood each other well. "Chris, what do you need?" Bennett asked. Taylor looked at the tactical display of the mountain fortress. "Time, sir, and maybe a little luck. This is going to be close quarters combat in tight corridors. It's going to be ugly. You have whatever you need. Just bring those people home." "Yes, sir, we will." The assault on the command center began at noon. Taylor led the main force through the front entrance while Blake's team infiltrated through a ventilation system Carter had identified in the structural scans. A third team used explosives to create a new entrance on the western side. The fighting was intense. The corridors echoed with weapons fire and explosions. The Kryn elite guards were the best soldiers the Empire had, and they fought with skill and determination. But the Marines had something the Kryn did not. They had been training for exactly this kind of combat their entire careers. Blake's team moved through the ventilation system, dropping into the complex at key points to outflank the defenders. They secured the... 3 weeks had passed since the liberation of the Valthran system. The human fleet remained in orbit, helping with reconstruction efforts and providing security. Medical teams worked around the clock treating the freed prisoners. Engineers helped rebuild damaged infrastructure. Slowly, the Valthran were beginning to recover. Elder Shavris stood in what remained of the council chambers on Valthis Prime. The building had been damaged during the occupation, but repairs were underway. She looked out through the broken windows at her city below. It was scarred and broken, but it was free, Captain Morgan joined her carrying 2 cups of tea. Martinez had taught the humans how to prepare Valthran beverages, and Morgan had made it a habit to share tea with Shavris during their daily meetings. "Thank you," Shavris said, accepting the cup. Her antenna twitched in what Morgan had learned was a sign of gratitude. "You did not have to stay. You could have left after the battle." Morgan shook her head. "We came to help you. That doesn't end just because the fighting stopped. Help means seeing it through until you're back on your feet." Shavris was quiet for a moment. Then she spoke carefully, choosing her words with precision. "When I sent that distress signal, I hoped for diplomats. I hoped for mediators who could negotiate with the Kryn. I never imagined what would actually happen. Your species is so different from ours." "You mean violent," Morgan said quietly. "I mean capable of violence when necessary. The Valthran evolved on a gentle world. We have no natural predators. Competition for resources was never violent. We cannot comprehend intentional harm to another being. But you understand it intimately." Morgan looked down at her tea. It was a fair observation, not an accusation. She thought about how to explain Earth to someone who had never known true danger. Earth is what we call a death world. Everything on our planet evolved to survive in harsh conditions. High gravity, extreme weather, aggressive predators, deadly diseases. For millions of years, humans had to fight every day just to stay alive. Violence is in our nature, yes, but so is cooperation, compassion, and the desire to protect the vulnerable. Shavris considered this. It is a strange combination. You are gentle with the weak but ruthless with the strong. That's because we know the difference between someone who needs help and someone who needs to be stopped. The Kryn didn't need negotiation or mediation. They needed to be defeated. Before Shavris could respond, Dr. Martinez entered the room. She looked troubled. "Captain, we have a problem. The Kryn prisoners are demanding to speak with Admiral Bennett. They say they have information about the Empire's response to our intervention." Morgan and Shavris exchanged glances. They made their way to the detention facility, where the captured Kryn soldiers were being held. General Vex, Warlord Krath's second-in-command, had requested the meeting. Admiral Bennett arrived shortly after. He entered the interview room where Vex waited, flanked by Marine guards. The Kryn general looked defeated, his once proud bearing now slumped. "You wanted to speak with me," Bennett said, taking a seat across from the prisoner. Vex looked up. "The Kryn Empire will not forgive what you have done here. They are already assembling a fleet. Within months, they will come to the system with overwhelming force." "Let them come," Bennett said calmly. "You do not understand. The Empire has hundreds of warships. They will not make the same mistakes we did. They will come prepared to face your tactics and technology." Bennett leaned forward. "General, why are you telling me this?" "What do you want?" Vex was quiet for a long moment. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. The Great Hall of the Kryn Empire was designed to intimidate. The ceiling soared 50 meters above the floor. Massive pillars carved from red stone lined the walls. At the far end, on a raised platform, sat the Kryn High Council. 7 of the most powerful warlords in the Empire. Admiral Bennett walked down the center aisle, flanked by Captain Morgan and Dr. Martinez. Major Taylor and a squad of Marines waited outside, ready to intervene if things went wrong. The tension in the hall was thick enough to cut. Supreme Commander Threx, the largest of the council members, spoke first. His voice echoed through the chamber. "Admiral Bennett of humanity, you stand before the High Council of the Kryn Empire. You have destroyed one of our battle groups. You have killed Warlord Krath, a decorated commander. You have interfered with our rightful conquest of the Valthran system. Explain yourself." Bennett did not flinch. He had faced worse than angry politicians and military leaders. He stepped forward and spoke clearly, his voice carrying through the hall. "The Valthran are a peaceful species. They had no weapons, no defenses, and no desire for conflict. Your forces invaded their system without provocation. They enslaved civilians, including children. They destroyed cities and committed acts that any civilized species would call genocide. When we received their distress signal, we had a choice: ignore it or act. We chose to act." Another council member, slightly smaller than Threx, leaned forward. "The Valthran were weak. We took what was ours by right of conquest. That is the way of the galaxy." Bennett shook his head. "No, that is the way of tyrants and bullies. Strength does not give you the right to harm the innocent. It gives you the responsibility to protect them." The council members looked at each other. One of them, an older Kryn with scarred scales, spoke with a hint of curiosity in his voice. You speak of protection and responsibility, yet you killed hundreds of our warriors. You destroyed our ships without mercy. How is that protection? We gave Warlord Krath a chance to withdraw peacefully, Bennett replied. He refused. He executed innocent prisoners to make a point. We responded by freeing those prisoners and stopping his forces. Every Kryn soldier who surrendered was treated with dignity. Those who chose to fight died fighting. That is not cruelty. That is justice. Threx slammed his fist on the armrest of his chair, the sound echoing through the hall. Justice? You speak to us of justice? The Kryn Empire has existed for 5,000 years. We have conquered hundreds of systems. We are the strongest military force in this sector of the galaxy. And you, a species we have never even heard of until 3 months ago, dare to lecture us. Bennett met his gaze without backing down. Yes, because being old and powerful doesn't make you right. It just makes you old and powerful. Humanity is young in the galaxy, but we have learned hard lessons. We know what happens when the strong prey on the weak without consequence. We know where that path leads. And we will not allow it to continue. Not in the Valthran system and not anywhere else we encounter it. The hall erupted in angry voices. Several council members demanded that Bennett be arrested immediately. Others called for war against humanity. Threx raised his hand for silence, and gradually the noise died down. You realize what you are saying? Threx asked quietly. You are threatening the Kryn Empire. You are saying that you will oppose us wherever we go. You have 3 ships in orbit. We have 300 in this system alone. How do you expect to back up your words? Dr. Martinez stepped forward. She had been quiet until now, letting Bennett handle the military and political aspects. But this was her moment. May I speak? She asked. Threx looked surprised but nodded. Martinez pulled out a datapad and projected a hologram into the center of the hall. It showed Earth rotating slowly. This is our homeworld. By galactic standards, it is classified as a Class 12 death world. The highest category. 97% of known species would die within a week of landing there without protection. The gravity is 1.3 times what most species can tolerate. The weather systems generate storms that can level cities. The native predators include creatures that can kill a Kryn warrior with ease. She changed the hologram to show images of Earth's wildlife. Lions, bears, sharks, crocodiles, venomous snakes. For 4 million years, humans evolved on this planet. We learned to hunt in packs. We learned to use tools. We learned to cooperate on a scale that few species can match. And we learned to endure. When other species would give up, humans keep going. When others would collapse from exhaustion, humans push through. She paused, letting the images sink in. You asked how we expect to back up our words. The answer is simple. We are Deathworlders. Every human soldier in our fleet can tolerate conditions that would kill your warriors. Our ships are built to withstand punishment that would tear yours apart. Our weapons are designed by minds that spent millennia perfecting the art of survival through violence. We do not want war with you, but if you force us into one, you will lose. The council chamber was silent. Martinez had laid out the truth in stark terms. The Kryn were facing something they had never encountered before. A species that was not only their equal but potentially their superior in warfare. The older council member with the scarred scales spoke again. His tone was more thoughtful now. So you come here with threats. You tell us to change our ways or face destruction. Is that your offer? Bennett shook his head. No, that would make us no better than you. We come with an offer of cooperation. The galaxy is a big place. There is room for both our species. But the days of unopposed Kryn expansion are over. You can no longer attack peaceful species without consequences. Captain Morgan added her voice. We are not asking you to become pacifists. We understand that conflict is part of galactic politics, but there are rules. There are lines that should not be crossed. Genocide is one of those lines. Slavery is another. If you want to conquer territory, fight those who can fight back. Leave the peaceful species alone. Threx leaned back in his chair. He was calculating, weighing his options. The Kryn were warriors, but they were not stupid. He could see that Bennett was offering them a way out, a chance to avoid a costly war. And what of the Valthran system? He asked. The Valthran system is under human protection now, Bennett said firmly. We have established a defensive pact with them. Any attack on the Valthran will be considered an attack on humanity. But we are willing to establish neutral zones, areas where neither of our species will interfere with the other. The council members conferred among themselves in low voices. Bennett waited patiently. This was the critical moment. If the Kryn refused, if they chose pride over pragmatism, then war was inevitable. Finally, Threx spoke. The High Council will consider your proposal. You will remain as guests on our homeworld while we deliberate. Be warned, any treachery will result in your immediate execution. Bennett bowed his head slightly. We understand. We thank the Council for hearing us. The humans were escorted to guest quarters in the capital city. They were comfortable but clearly monitored. Taylor and his Marines set up security rotations, making sure someone was always awake and alert. They were surrounded by potential enemies in the heart of hostile territory. That night, Morgan found Bennett standing on a balcony, looking out over the Kryn capital. The city was a testament to military might. Fortified buildings, wide streets designed for troop movements, monuments celebrating victories. Do you think they will agree? Morgan asked. Bennett was quiet for a moment. I don't know. Pride is a powerful thing. They've been the dominant power in this region for thousands of years. Accepting limits, admitting that someone can challenge them. That's hard. What if they refuse? Then we fight. And we make sure the galaxy knows why. Other species will be watching. If the Kryn attack us after we offered peace, they'll lose whatever legitimacy they had. Other conquered species might rise up. Allies might turn away. Sometimes the moral high ground is worth as much as military strength. 3 days later, the Council summoned Bennett again. This time, the atmosphere in the hall was different. Less hostile, more calculated. Threx spoke for the Council. The High Council has deliberated. We recognize that the galaxy has changed. We recognize that humanity is a power that cannot be ignored. Therefore, we offer the following terms. The Kryn Empire will withdraw all claims to the Valthran system. We will cease offensive operations against species classified as non-combatant. In exchange, humanity will not interfere with existing Kryn territories and will recognize our sovereignty within our established borders. Neutral zones will be established between our territories. Trade and communication channels will remain open. Bennett felt relief wash over him, but he kept his expression neutral. The Terran Federation accepts these terms. We will formalize the agreement in writing and establish the neutral zones. We hope this is the beginning of a more peaceful era for both our species. Threx stood. Do not mistake this for weakness, Admiral. We accept these terms because they serve our interests, not because we fear you. But know this. If humanity breaks this agreement, if you interfere in our affairs again, there will be war. Bennett stood as well. And if the Kryn attack peaceful species again, if you cross the lines we have drawn, we will respond. This is not weakness.